Welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast, where we talk about all things that are extended from Victoria's Cantina on YouTube. So basically that means Star Wars, and more Star Wars, and a little bit of other things mixed in there, other fun topics and cool stuff in my opinion. First episode of 2023. Now this episode that you're going to listen to in just a little bit was actually recorded in January of 2022. And I'm just really behind on editing podcast episodes. I have several that I need to get edited and shared. And finally, I'm having a little bit of time to work on that. So a little bit of news. I've been really busy, and I guess that's not really news because, when people are busy in their daily lives, their content kind of takes a back seat. And I have been super busy with work. I also go to school. But if you've followed me on social media, you've probably also seen an announcement I made last week. I had cancer, and it was one of those things that you don't really expect to happen, like when it does, because, I guess it's not a surprise. It's a surprise, and it's unwelcome anytime you get that news. But I'm kind of at an age where I didn't really expect that to happen yet, and it was just really. It was a little bit shocking, and it was a little bit challenging to deal with. But thankfully, I've had some amazing doctors and advocates and some great care. And I'm proud to say that I'm cancer free. I dealt with it. I had stage 2 papillary thyroid cancer, and it was a pretty good size malignancy, but I had to have my thyroid removed. It's gone. I'm on medication now, and I'm just over a week post-surgical. So you can probably tell my voice isn't 100%. My stamina isn't 100% yet. I'm still, recuperating my energy little by little. And yeah, so I'm probably not going to be recording at least any new episodes or, anything anytime too soon, because I still need to regain my strength. I need to regain my vocal abilities, because that's been pretty big hindrance. When the surgery is right there at your, basically on top of your vocal cords, it's kind of an impact. It's going to have an impact. So, but I do want to say thank you. I really appreciate all your kind words on Instagram and Twitter and everything. And so thank you for that, and really appreciate you guys very much, as always. And, I've got things that I am working on for the channel. I've got things that I am working on for the live stream, the weekly live stream with some guests, old and new, old favorites, and hopefully new favorites too. That'll be coming soon. I want to get that started within the next couple of weeks, and then make that a regular thing again. But it's just because I've been dealing with this for a little while now, it's, content has taken a back seat, and, but now I think I'm ready to kind of focus on it a little bit more. So, thank you for your support. Appreciate your patience. And, all that being said, we're going to get into this episode. It's our very first episode of 2023. You will hear some confusion on my part saying that it's 2021. And then Dan Curto saying, no, it's 2022, because I was confused at the time, but that was a year ago. It was over a year ago now that we recorded this episode. But yeah, it is 2023. But this episode was recorded in January 2022. That said, it's still a great episode, focusing on the retrospective. I know a lot of people have been asking me about that at conventions. I get asked about it at online. Hey, Victoria, what's happening with the Star Wars Modern Toy Line retrospective? Well, it's been a while, but here's the first episode in our continuation of that series. So we're going to be talking about the 30th anniversary collection with none other than Dan Curto, and I'm really happy to talk to Dan once again on Cantina Chatter podcast. And there will be a part 2 of this episode where we'll get into the vehicles and multi-packs and all the extra stuff, just because of how big this toy line was. And then a part 3 in which we focus on Saga Legends, which will be coming up at a later date. But for now, let's get into the 30th anniversary collection, which is one of the most remarkable, incredible lines that Hasbro has ever done for Star Wars. I hope you enjoy it. Relax, kick back, pull up a drink, favorite beverage, and let's get started. Welcome back to the Cantina Chatter podcast. This is the first episode of 2021, and we are continuing the series that we kickstarted back in, I think it was 2018. It's been a few years now since we started this, but you know what? The modern Star Wars line is just so big, so expansive. So many lines that we've gotten since 1995, and each of them deserves its time to be reminisced upon and recalled and discussed in detail. And really glad that we have another episode in this series, and who better to talk the 30th anniversary collection from 2007 than the man himself, Dan Curto. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I should point out that it is now 2022.
It's going to take me a while to get used
I know. It's always like that with me too. Whenever I have to write dates down, I'm like 20. No, 22. Okay, forget it.
Thank you. No, you know, it's funny. Last night I was getting, because I'm on holiday break right now, but I go back to work on Monday, and I was starting to get assignments ready for the students, and I started creating these logs that they fill out, and I put 2021, and then I was like, oh no, I have to go back and fix it. But yeah, it's just going to take a while for me to get into that habit of writing 2022. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it. But anyway, thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure. And I, obviously enjoy talking about all this stuff. And this particular year rather, is I consider it, a lot of other people consider it one of the golden eras of modern Star Wars collecting. There's just so much came out this year. They really pulled out all the stops. They treated it as a movie year and just hit all of the bells and whistles for every single release, which was at the time was amazing.
For sure. The 30th anniversary collection was huge. It was expansive. It built upon all the awesome stuff that came the previous year with the Saga collection. And it touched on all the bases at that point in Star Wars. You got a little bit of everything from all the different films. And, this was right before the Clone Wars show came out. This was before, obviously years before the sequels, anything like that. So the focus here was primarily on the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. But you also got some expanded universe stuff. You got The Force Unleashed. It was a very expansive line, and it really built upon all the stuff we had gotten previous to this. So definitely one of my favorite lines. And like you said, it's from the golden age of Star Wars action figure collecting.
Right. And each figure came with something that was a nice nod to the old Power of the Force Kenner line. They came with a special collector's coin, which was really, really a nice addition, and some variations to the coins as well, as we'll get into.
Yeah, for sure. That was a really cool pack-in. So, Dan, let's set the scene here. Let's go back to 2007.
Okay.
I think this line started hitting, I want to say it was maybe something like February or so, if I recall correctly, that this started making it to retail. Is that about what you remember too?
Yes. They had a release schedule, and I remember talking with Hasbro a lot back in those days. Where their idea was that a new wave of figures would be in stores on shelves every 6 weeks throughout the year. So very ambitious, especially, you think about today, that's like unheard of.
That's right. I remember that. I remember hearing that. I don't know if it was from you or reading it somewhere at that point, but yeah, that, definitely not what we see now. Now it's like every 6 months in some cases, right. It feels like.
Yes, yeah. and like we were saying before, a lot of stuff that like vehicles and things like that specifically were carry forwards from previous lines, like the Revenge of the Sith line, the Saga collection line, and they added in what was one of my favorite lines ever was the comic packs.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll get into all that, but that, to me, that was such a fun thing because I'm a big comic book collector. And seeing, they were just reprint comics. They weren't original tales. Oh, believe me, I did try to talk them into doing that. But there was a lot of excitement throughout this particular year. It carried over into 2008 a little bit too. But there was like I said, there's so much release, so many great figures in the line, and a lot of chances taken, not only with like expanded universe, but like with just their own, let's say, Hasbro creations that you just would not see nowadays.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So 2007, it's kind of hard to believe that this is 15 years ago when you think about it. That 2007 was 15 years ago.
Oh my God.
What were you doing in 2007, Dan?
Documenting all these figures.
Yeah, documenting all these figures. You were there in the midst of all this, and I wasn't creating content back then, but I was collecting. I was reading your stuff. I was following Rebel Scum and Galactic Hunter, and the sites from back then that were popular. No, this was 2007 for me personally. It was a very memorable year. That was like right before I moved to California, and kind of been here ever since. It's hard to believe it's that long now, but good times. If I'm trying to think 15 years, I would have been 15 years younger as well. So definitely, different things going on in my life compared to now, but I am still collecting. You're still here talking about Star Wars as well, so we're still in it.
Yeah, it's funny how things change, but don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was my full-time job, was to photograph the toys and update the website and interview people. I travel a lot. Back then, I would go to Toy Fair, San Diego Comic-Con. I went to all the celebrations. I went to Japan for Celebration Japan. That was in 2008. And Dallas had a couple of shows that particular year. And there was New York Comic-Con. I went there. So I did a lot of traveling. And while this line was happening and going on, I also worked with I worked as an advisor, I guess, with Hasbro on like the collector base. So I was sort of like the voice of the collectors in the Hasbro mind. So with the Saga Legends poll the year before, and as we'll get to, one of the waves in this particular line, I had a direct input into, which was very exciting, obviously, and sort of a unique opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. You were definitely keeping busy with all of this, and I think what we're going to do is, for this episode, we'll talk about the main line, right? The 30th anniversary collection. But there was also Saga Legends. There was Saga Legends, which was basically a continuation of what they did the year before with greatest battles and heroes and villains. And it was kind of like a greatest hits sort of thing with a lot of main characters. And there was a lot of really cool stuff that came out of that, including things that I believe the fans were able to vote on as well. And we'll save that for the next episode, just because this is such a huge and expansive subline to the 30th anniversary collection. So we'll target the main line in this episode. We'll come back to that in the next one.
Okay.
All right. So, Dan, let's talk about the packaging for the 30th anniversary collection. So this was a far cry from what we saw in Saga collection, which obviously, harkened back to the original Kenner look. It was kind of a mesh between old and new. This was totally different from anything we had seen up to this point, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the hardest to keep in mint condition with all of the angles and the cuts on it and everything. But I tell you what I really loved about this line was, from the design point of view, was the character highlight in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You have the film on the bottom to kind of identify what episode it was from, and then you have the main character in the corner showing you like a hero image of it, and then the coin was below that, and then the figure was on the bottom on the other side. But the Star Wars 30th anniversary logo was such a strange layout, because it was a square on an angle. And it was kind of tough to deal with, which we'll touch base on that in a little while. But it was such a unique look at the time. Like you said, compared to what we have. And I don't know, I kind of dug it, to tell you the truth.
I still think that this is probably the most like modern looking like Star Wars packaging. Like it, for considering that it's 15 years old, it wasn't making any effort to like stick with the heritage of the the vintage look. It was completely its own thing. Like you said, all the angles that it had, very angular, different corners, and the layout was different. And I still think it holds up. It still looks really distinctive and unique for Star Wars packaging. And I think if you saw this on the shelves today, I think it would still fit in, just the overall design and look of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first thing that they put out there. So I believe the very first thing that they did was they released, because, like, as you said, this was going to come with coins on each of these figures. They put out an album that you could buy to put all of those coins in. But to get you to buy the album, they also gave you the very first figure in this 30th anniversary line, right? Which was Darth Vader.
Yep. And the Darth Vader figure was a repack from a previous year. But it was still, it's Darth Vader. Kids are going to want that, of course. And the coin itself had enough slots to hold, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly how many, but enough. I know I filled it.
Yeah, I still have mine in the other room.
Yeah, me too. I came across, and it also includes the first coin. So it has the Darth Vader coin to get you started, which was really cool.
Right, and the artwork in this album was really great. Really great artwork.
A nice collage through at the time, 6-film trilogy. Or trilogy? No, what's a 6 film? I don't know. 6 films.
Yeah, 6 films. Double trilogy.
Yes. Now, could you imagine if they did that now with all the other films? But this was like a pipe dream, because there were no other films coming out. It was done, not over with. As fans were like, okay, well, that sucks, but we get it. The story has been told, and then we hear about Clone Wars coming, so we're excited about that. So then the 30th anniversary line. This is a huge celebration of Star Wars altogether. So it's fitting. It's fitting.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the cool things was that most of the waves of this line featured a McQuarrie concept figure in each wave.
Yes. Now they had done a McQuarrie concept Stormtrooper figure now at that time, like 4 years prior. It was a Fan's Choice winner. So they had gotten that started, but this was definitely a nod towards Ralph and his contributions. And in fact, in the first wave, the Stormtrooper was brought back as one of the first figures in the line. So that was a nice touch. A little bit of a deco change, but basically the same sculpt.
Right. Yeah, it was cool to see that again. It didn't have the glow-in-the-dark lightsaber anymore, but still nice that it came back. And really cool that they, had these themed waves, right? Each of the waves was based around a film. The very first wave, after that Darth Vader with album came out, was the Revenge of the Sith, right? So, this is 2007. You're only a couple years out from the movie. It's still hugely popular. The prequels are still fresh in people's minds. And, it made sense that this was the first wave, because you got some really good selections that had not yet been released in the previous Revenge of the Sith base figure waves from other lines. So wave 1 consists of Galactic Marine, Mustafar Lava Miner, R2-D2, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, Airborne Trooper, Super Battle Droid, and as you noted, the McQuarrie Signature Series figure in this wave was the concept Stormtrooper.
Right. Yeah, a solid wave. And another thing to point out too, in this particular year in the packaging, they did not skimp on accessories. So R2-D2 and the Super Battle Droid comes with flame effects that can attach to the figure, but they also connect to each other as well, which made like the scene just play out a little bit more. And I just really liked when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a really neat thing. And that's one of the cool things about this line. As we go through the waves, we'll get into it more, but just the unique accessories that a lot of these figures came with to interact with other stuff. But yeah, so this is a really great wave. And, we had gotten a lot of troopers between 2005 to 2006, but we hadn't gotten all of them. And, the Airborne Trooper was one we didn't yet have. The Galactic Marine we didn't yet have, so it was nice to see them. I think the only Airborne Trooper we had was a pre-paint, if you will, that came in one of the battle packs from Mace Windu's unique squad.
Yeah, and that's funny because that's one of the things I was kind of saying. Like Hasbro just kind of made up their own thing for that purple Airborne Trooper. Like, that wasn't seen on screen. That wasn't seen in any comic book or anything. They just sort of like, hey, we're going to tell part of the story as well. And Mace Windu, he likes purple, so we're going to have a purple clone squad dedicated straight to him. And that was really cool because they kind of sprinkled that in over the years in different releases. But that purple clone trooper was not only the first one of that, but also the first time using this particular mold.
Right. Yeah, and they were really, really popular too. These clones, people were army building. They were buying multiples of these, and it was hard to find them sometimes. During this time, I was living in San Antonio, Texas. Big city. And there was a lot of competition. There were a lot of stores too. There were quite a few Targets and Walmarts, and I presume most of them are still there. But there was a lot of competition, and you'd run into people collecting these too. So, but yeah, great wave. Let's talk a little bit about as we go through each of these waves. One suggestion you had is that we highlight a certain figure that maybe was the standout of the wave, and could be useful as a repack if Hasbro were to go back and revisit some of these characters. What would you say from this wave would be the standout for you?
Well, I think we might have given it away a little bit because we highlighted him already in our conversation, but the Airborne Trooper.
Yeah.
For me, it was such a cool figure to finally get, and it had a removable helmet, and then a nice little Easter egg. They had that little satchel that you could hide a blaster inside of.
Right.
Behind, really, which was kind of a nice little detail. But of all the figures, I mean, I do love the really oddball characters like the Mustafar Lava Miner. But in this particular wave, I'd have to say one of my personal favorites would be the Airborne Trooper.
Yeah, Airborne Trooper is great. And we haven't really seen that since then, like this classic Utapau version of that trooper. I know in the Gaming Greats or TVC that they have done the Purge Trooper, I believe it is, and it has kind of a similar helmet, but they're still using the old clone body mostly from 2011. So personally, I prefer this sculpt. I think it's a lot more proportionate, and I'd prefer to see this come back rather than that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of the articulation has improved over the years, and they do the photoreal deco nowadays. But I think this figure still holds up and would definitely fit in with vintage collection.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the Galactic Marine, I would say too, is just a standout for that wave, and was really cool at the time.
Yeah, and he was also one of the characters, if I remember correctly, when they were doing the not the fans repack vote, but there used to be a fan's choice, and they would pick the winner from that. But the previous year, the Galactic Marine was very, very high up in the results, and he of the top, if I remember correctly, and this has been a while since I did this, of the top 25 figures from 2006, I think maybe 18 or 19 of them eventually got made. So Hasbro really paid attention to the fans' input, during these years, really. And pretty much if you didn't win, well, you still might get made if you were the second or third choice or eighth choice, ninth choice. They really were hitting everything, which was nice.
They were. So let's look at Wave 2. Wave 2 is the Battle of Yavin. That's the theme. And I love this whole thing of theme waves. I think it was great. Rebel Honor Guard, Han Solo, Smuggler, Luke Skywalker, Yavin Ceremony, Death Star Trooper, Biggs Darklighter as Rebel Pilot, and the concept series figure for this wave was Concept Boba Fett.
Right. And one thing to note, this wave was originally planned for the Saga collection, but they held it back because they wanted to include it in the 30th anniversary line. And this came out very quickly after the first wave. So they really wanted to hit not only Revenge of the Sith, because that was the most recent film, but also get a New Hope wave out there pretty early on because it's the 30th anniversary of A New Hope.
Yeah, this was cool. This is a strong wave. You got to have that OT stuff sprinkled in there, and this is a solid wave of doing that. And some of it was stuff we'd kind of seen before, right? Han Solo, Luke, Yavin, ceremony. I think we'd seen that in Power of the Force prior to this. But it's still a strong wave. Rebel Honor Guard, that had never been done. Death Star Trooper, I think we'd had an iteration of that. I believe that may have even been something we saw maybe during like Power of the Jedi. Did we get a Death Star Trooper somewhere in that time?
We had a Power of the Force 2 in a pre-posed running position.
That's right.
Which was kind of goofy, but that worked. But a lot of, I'm looking at these now, and it's so funny how many of them have been upgraded since.
Yeah,
I think the Luke Yavin ceremony has been re-released and repainted and fixed, but it's basically the same body.
Yeah, I think they did. I believe they used like Ponda Baba's arms or something, and then they did something. Yeah, there's a little. It's like a mixed. The most recent one they used some different parts on it, and New Head, I believe.
And you can see like in the Rebel Honor Guard and Han Solo, they still have these swivel joints for the arms and not the ball joints. Yeah. And the Biggs Darklighter is just a reused X-wing body from the past, but it's an X-wing body. It's human male, good enough.
Sure.
But they've redone him over the years too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. And the concept Boba Fett, such a cool figure. And I really liked how it had the two helmets so that you can change up the looks.
Yeah. And then the hidden feature where there's a blaster in his torso that comes out.
Yeah.
That was kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, for what it was, it was definitely a great wave. And, Han Solo with the headpiece goes right in with the Millennium Falcon, which turns out was coming the next year, but
yeah,
the big BMF.
The BMF, yeah, I still see that in my head every day. I walked into Toys R Us for my shift, like just there at the front of the store. Yeah, so Wave 3, A New Hope. We're sticking with the OT. Wave 3 was Darth Vader, Sith Lord, is what he was referred to as there. Biggs Darklighter, Tashi Station. Luke Skywalker, Moisture Farmer, Jawa and Lin Droid, Imperial Stormtrooper, Galactic Empire. The McQuarrie figure was Concept Chewbacca, and then Mylum Onith and Ellis Helrot. So pretty expansive, well-rounded Tatooine-focused wave, huh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and this Darth Vader that we got here, I believe this was a repaint, but what was really cool about this one was the accessories that he came with, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Like we were saying before, the accessories that they had in, they really pulled out all the stops, but this has a, Obi-Wan Kenobi cloak after he just wiped him out in the film. So.
Yeah, it's a sculpted plastic. It's got the lightsaber sculpted into the cloak. And, yeah, just to think of, you would never see that now. I mean, just the accessories that you got were insane. I mean, Luke, he had this towering moisture evaporator that came with him. Like, you would never see anything like that today.
Oh, no. And it was like you had to assemble it. Some assembly required to make this, which was twice the size of the figure itself.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, and just a great accessory. I mean, that's the kind of world building stuff that is so important to the 3 3/4 inch line, and to get things like this packed with individual figures was really something special.
Right, and I mean, what we forgot to mention, our favorite figure from the previous wave. I'm gonna vote the Quarry concept of Fett.
I would agree with that. I think that was the standout for that wave.
But for this wave, I'm gonna go with an unusual choice. but because of the pack-in. So the Jawa, because he came with that extra little droid, which was actually
Yeah.
quite big. Like you couldn't have the Lindroid by itself. It wouldn't sell, I would guess. But having it with the Jawa, and not only just a Jawa, but the Jawa that was the leader of that clan. If you, I remember looking at the film at the time, and there is one Jawa that wears like a light tan vest, and he's the one talking to Uncle Owen, and
Interesting.
Biggs is a great figure too, because that was from the classic, cut scene that established the character before we saw him on Yavin in his X-Wing flight suit. Like we just saw, Biggs in his X-Wing suit. Now here's Biggs when he was on Tatooine. And if you don't know about this, it made no sense. But kudos to Hasbro for, hey, we do know about it, and we're going to make a figure about it.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I'm not. Have you watched the most recent episode of Book of Boba Fett?
I did.
Yeah, so
that was a nice little Easter egg.
For sure. And luckily we have figures of Cammy and Fixer as well, huh?
Yes. But I mean, the concept Chewbacca is also outstanding. I mean, most of these concept figures are just really, really great figures. I mean, for the time, there's some articulation and stuff like that could be added to them, but the fact that we got them was amazing.
Yeah, it's great that those exist, because it's hard to imagine them doing those these days. But I agree. I think the Jawa with the Lindroid is the standout for me as well. I love that whole anything Tatooine. I love. That's like my favorite thing in Star Wars is Tatooine stuff, and just being able to build out that scene, the purchase of the droids. Hasbro did give us each and every one of those droids over time, and to get one of them in here packed in with a Jawa. And you think about the figures themselves. The Jawa is great. That droid is great. I love the translucent dome and the little antennas and the posable arm at the front. It's just a great little accessory.
Yeah, this really was like we've been saying, this was a great year for this kind of stuff.
For sure. And we can't not mention the 2 Cantina aliens that came in this wave. Think about that, 2 Cantina aliens in a single wave. We have Mayum Onith, which is it came with a bar section, so that if you were collecting those bar sections they had put out years before, you could have the rounded end of the section to continue building your scene. It had the 2 bar stools, and the figure itself is quite great. And then of course Ellis Hellrot, that's another unique alien, very obscure alien that you don't even really see too well in the scene. But also came with a bar section as well. So just fantastic overall. Yeah.
That Cantina bar section series, they started in 2003, I think, back in the Saga line, and then continued into 2004 with some repacks and a couple of repaints. But you're finally able to complete it with these 2 accessories. And each one is uniquely sculpted because it has to form that circle and then still connect to the other end of the bar, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah. See how far $6.99 went back then? Wow. Yeah. A great wave. After that, it was Return of the Jedi for Wave 4. So this was Boba Fett animated debut. So his holiday special colors. Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. We had a CZ4. Okay, this is the droid from that we see in Jabba's palace. Umpus Day, who's a Clatoonian, the drummer that plays the drums in the special edition. The McQuarrie concept figure was Darth Vader. And then we also had Hermie Odal and C-3PO and Salacious Crumb.
That was a great wave for Return of the Jedi. I was going to say Revenge of the Jedi, but that's like a totally different thing and really getting surreal here. But the drummer comes with half of the drum, and for a while you're like, well, what about the other half of the drum? But that would come later, which was pretty awesome. And the Luke Skywalker, not my favorite figure,
no,
but it was cool that they included, you got to have Luke Skywalker, and of course, the holiday special Boba Fett was just so great, and probably the only acknowledgement from the holiday special, and yeah, but which was pretty awesome, and the way that they did the card art on that was really nicely done as well.
Yes, definitely. I don't think we've seen this version of that figure come back since then, have we?
No, well, yes, he was included in one of the Build-A-Droids that were Walmart exclusives the following year.
Okay.
In Legacy Collection.
Cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily from the holiday special, probably, but it was the same deco.
Ah, gotcha. All right. Other than that, yeah, Hermiodal. We got to talk about Hermiodal, don't we?
Oh, that would be my vote. For my favorite of this particular wave would definitely be him, just because I have a soft spot for the big characters that you just wouldn't see anywhere else, like this guy. And what's the Ephant Mon was a huge, really cool figure, but this is a guy from Jabba's palace. It's sort of like you blink and you miss him type of thing, but once you see him, you don't really forget him.
Right.
And the way they sculpted him and wrapped him in all the soft goods and everything, which was really, really nice. I don't know. I always dug this figure. He's not pretty, but that's good. Star Wars aliens.
Yeah, it's good with Star Wars aliens. They're not supposed to be pretty, and this is truly a character. This is truly one you look at that is unique for a Star Wars alien, and just has such presence if you put him in a Jabba's palace scene or in the sail barge. With the tongue hanging out and everything. And I think he had the articulated jaw. So, yeah, solid release. And just I can't imagine them bringing him back, but I think he would look pretty amazing on a TVC card.
Right. They would have to do something else. I mean, I don't know that they could put him out on a normal card back, because he's so big, there's no room for any of the card art. And the bubble and vintage is so, specific.
Yeah.
That I don't know. You'd need a really, really large, a large design. So maybe a boxed set or something like that.
Yeah, that would make sense. And then C-3PO and Salacious Crumb. This was really neat because I don't think we've ever, certainly not before then, and I don't think since then, have we gotten C-3PO with the green Jabba spit on him. And the figure itself, the eye thing, I think is, it's a little gimmicky. It's not an ideal way to make it work because it just sticks out of the back of his head.
Right.
But this is the one that I have on my barge because in that scene he still has the spit on him. He's got the eye coming out, right? So that's what I have in my barge, is this version of 3PO, and I hope that they go back at some point and find a way to make this even better.
And this was if I remember right, this was the first time that Salacious Crumb was released. But it was re-released several times since. But this was the original way to get this particular minifigure. I'm not sure what you call it. Accessory figure. Yeah.
It's definitely a unique thing. I'm glad that they tried back then. They weren't afraid to try new things with their figures, and this was certainly an example of that. But I agree. Hermiodal, I would say, is the standout from this wave. Not to no skin off the teeth of CZ4, which is also a pretty outstanding figure.
Right, and not to be confused with CZ3, the figure from Tatooine in Mos Eisley. So there's a very subtle difference between the two droids, but I'm surprised Hasbro never re-released this figure as a CZ3.
Yeah, it's so good. It's such a good figure.
And now because I'm collecting the Disney. I'm a bit behind, but the Disney Droid Factory protocol droids, I'm starting to. It's very difficult to collect them nowadays, but I'm starting to have all of the parts, and I'm almost complete with a CZ3 from the Disney Parks line.
Oh, cool.
But they made different colors for these as well, which makes it even more complicated. But I dig that one too.
Nice. All right, so let's talk about the next
next wave. So this is the expanded universe wave.
This is gonna be for me.
Yeah, this was a stellar wave. This was probably one of the hardest waves to find in the whole 30th anniversary line. But all right, so number 31, Roran Korob, the Jedi Knight from the animated Clone Wars microseries, a Thorian Jedi. Yoda and Kaibuk from the same series. Anakin Skywalker as Jedi Knight, also from Clone Wars microseries. We had the first appearance of Darth, and only appearance of Darth Revan in the 3 3/4 inch line, I believe. Darth Malak, pre-cyborg Grievous, which is kind of like, concept art, how he looked before he was, the cybernetic General Grievous. And the McQuarrie concept series figure was Starkiller Hero. So quite a wave for sure.
Right. That Starkiller Hero is when Luke was originally conceived as a girl, but then it spun off into Leia. It's kind of weird, but that was one of the, if I remember right, that was one of the initial plots that they were going to have merged. Some of these characters were merged into others over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
little known fact there.
Yeah, it's funny you say Yoda and Kaibuk, because if you look at it, it's really Kaibuk with a little Yoda thrown in. But that even though it's Beast, it's not really a figure. It's an outstanding sculpt. It's an outstanding deco, and the fact that we got something like that in a 3 3/4 inch version is just it's incredible, because you wouldn't even think that they would make that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
the Yoda is a repaint from a different release, but the Kaibuk was like, wow, that's where the budget went with this guy.
Yeah, it's amazing that came out. I kind of wish I had more than one. The Kaibuk is just stunning. It's a work of art. It's such a unique thing. It's something we'll probably never see the likes of again. But the fact that they did it at least at one point in time, complete with its articulated tail. I still remember the tail moves around.
Yes,
it's awesome. Totally awesome. Other than that, Roran Korob was another highlight, I believe. I love Ithorians. They're one of my favorite alien species, and getting one as a Jedi, I think was a really neat thing to see.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that when we get further on down the line here. But there was something special about Roran Korob and his compatriots. That again, this was not something that you would normally get in an action figure line. This would be a character that would be overlooked. But in this particular year, they definitely didn't shy away from these D-list characters.
Right. Yeah. Anakin, was neat, and then with the blue paint on him, shirtless.
Mm-hmm.
And then Darth Revan and Darth Malak. Even back then, I didn't think they were the best figures, particularly Malak, but they were very popular characters, and they still are. And
I have never played this game, but I do know all about the character because my son has played it, and I've watched him play it many times. But I think they're overrated. I don't particularly care for Malak. As you said, the articulation was wonky, and the removable mouthpiece or whatever was kind of cool, but I don't know why they didn't really do that. Revan is a very, very popular character, and I really don't understand why, but he looks great. It's just he's all plastic, so you can't really pose him. You can't really move him all that much.
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing with the concept Grievous, or the Warlord Grievous. He's not very posable.
No, and he's hard to stand.
Right, and when he put the cloak and stuff on him, he's very heavy. So it's difficult for him to stand up. Yeah, but I mean, it was based on the concept art, and it looks just like it. So
yeah,
you can't go wrong with that. And I'm trying to remember there was a book, Star Wars Visionaries, that had this concept art on it and kind of went into the background of it. And you saw, if I remember right, you saw a little bit about his history in the Clone Wars series.
Mm-hmm.
So for what it was, they did a great job bringing all these elements to life. And, it really was a great figure, but it's got some issues.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a fun one, though.
So it sounds like the standout for this wave would be the Kaibuck.
Yeah, I think so.
Because we're like jonesing over that thing.
Yeah, Kaibuck is awesome. I love the Kaibuck.
Yes. Now, would he be brought back these days? I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
But still, it's great that it was actually created at all. Really,
right? It is. It's really quite miraculous. So the next wave, The Empire Strikes Back. We have Han Solo with Torture Rack. There is Lando Calrissian in his smuggler outfit for the very first time ever. General McQuarrie, Rebel Officer. 4 LOM, Bounty Hunter. And McQuarrie Concept Series for this one was the Concept Snow Trooper.
Mm-hmm. So Lando basically, I used to think Lando stole Han Solo's. He raided his closet, but now that we've seen Solo, it really was the other way around, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this is cool, and I remember this one at the time had been rumored for years. Oh yeah, Lando Calrissian in Han Solo's clothes, is people were saying. Of course, they couldn't put that on the card, right? That wouldn't look very good.
Right.
But so it's Lando Calrissian in smuggler outfit, and just the way they did the artwork of Billy D. Williams wearing that outfit there on the card, I think is pretty great. He's in the clouds, Cloud City.
Absolutely, and it's using the VOTC Lando body for the most part, but it still works.
Yeah,
it still works, really.
It does.
And again, this is another one I doubt we'll ever see revisited.
Right. As easy as a repaint as it would be for them to do, I agree. I don't think we'll ever see this again. And let's talk about Han Solo with Torture Rack, because, another accessory that was just...
Yes, and I'm going to say, kind of like Yoda with Kaibuck, I'm going to say this is my personal favorite because of the accessory, really. The figure itself is, it's a very specific scene. So it looks great when he's in the rack, but it looks weird when he's not.
Right.
But this torture rack is so cool.
It is. It's great. It's great. It's just one of those pieces that, it's hard to imagine seeing that these days, but... they were brave back then. They did some really unique things, to really build out the line. And yeah, it's a great piece for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else is in there. 4 LOM. Cool.
Which was great. And I believe they brought him back already.
Yes.
When Vintage started up, they brought him back not only in the single carded release, but also back when he was known as Zuckuss.
Right.
and as a Comic-Con exclusive, they did the 4 LOM, and I call him 4 LOM, but 4 LOM and Zuckuss in the Kenner mix-up named. Which,
yeah.
If you don't know the story, that was pretty much it. They got him wrong.
Yep.
But as a kid, we didn't know that.
Yeah, nobody would have known that. Yeah.
And they fixed it. And I do have to say, so I have a little bit of a story on the General McQuarrie.
Okay.
So this is before the figure came out. I was at Celebration in LA. So whatever that was that 4?
Number 4. I was there.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I was there, and there was a team that put together the book of Ralph McQuarrie's artwork. Okay, and they had created a custom figure of Ralph McQuarrie, which was basically what we see here. Only instead of a brand new head, they used Chancellor Palpatine's head, and they had created it as a special gift that they gave to me. because I was part of the Force cast, and they were listening to the Force cast, and they were on the Force cast many times, and they knew that I was an action figure fan, and they said, "Hey, Dan, we thought you would dig this." And they made more than one. They made a few of them, but I have one of those on the Saga Collection card back from 2006, but it was a instead of Major Bren Derlin, it was General McQuarrie, and I'm like, that is so freaking cool.
It is.
You know, and then Hasbro was like, "Oh, no, we can't see this, we can't do that," because of course the next year they were already planning this version. But we didn't officially know that at the time.
Right. Yeah, it's a great figure, and I think this is the only Ralph McQuarrie figure that we have, isn't it?
Yes, and this is a blink and you miss it cameo scene in the film. But such a tribute, especially during this year when you have all these concept art figures coming out, to actually include the man himself.
Right. Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Such a cool thing. And
like we've been saying all along, they've definitely pulled out all the stops this particular year, and they did a lot of great nods to not only great figures but also the history of Star Wars in general.
Oh, for sure. They certainly did. All right, so next wave, Return of the Jedi once again. This time we have some Ewoks. We have Ramba and Grok in a 2-pack. We have a Tycho Selchu, the A-Wing pilot. We have Anakin Skywalker Jedi Spirit. Very first time that the Hayden Christensen Anakin Spirit was put into the 3 3/4-inch line. R2-D2 with cargo net, and the concept for this wave is Han Solo.
Yes, and this is a Han Solo that kind of spun off into the Han Solo we know, and also a Ben Kenobi. So that was a weird amalgamation between those two characters. But again, a fun wave. I'm trying to remember, did we ever get any more Spirit figures like this? Anakin is here, but did we ever get an Obi-Wan and a Yoda in this style?
No, because the last Obi-Wan would have been in the OTC is when they gave us that one, and I think Yoda would have been in the Cinema Scene 3-pack from Power of the Force 2.
Well, I remember we got Yoda like this with the see-through cloth, but that was in 6-inch Black Series.
Right, Black Series.
So we never finished off these characters. That's something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And this was I really liked this Anakin. I know some people maybe didn't, but other than the soft goods being kind of hard to work with, I really thought that they really did a good job on like the sheer sort of look where they did that.
Yeah, and Tycho Selchu is another one of those expanded universe characters. Well, now they're called Legends characters. That was from the novels or the comics, one of the two, but they retroed him into the film. Like he was never identified on screen, but they said, "Oh, this guy that did this thing. Well, that was this character. You didn't know that, but now we're telling you."
Yeah, that was cool. R2-D2, if you have an Endor diorama, you got to have the cargo net that this one comes with. And it's not just the cargo net. He also has the, what would we even call the sticks, the stretcher.
Yes. The stretcher they carried him around in and were going to roast him. I don't know. They were going to roast Han Solo, but I don't know what they had planned for. Maybe because he couldn't, wheel through the terrain of Endor so well. But the cargo net is pretty massive, and it's pretty cool. And I believe, if I remember correctly, yes, here's a picture of it. You can fit a lot of figures in that cargo net. Yeah,
that's so cool. That's so cool.
I'm going to go with the Ewoks for this one. And it's a weird thing because when I don't know if this was the case for you, but Ewoks were hated when Return of the Jedi came out. Which is like, oh my God, little teddy bears? Really? This is so stupid. But they have become so popular and beloved by the fan base over the decades, over time. And just to get Now we have gotten 2 Ewoks in the past, obviously back at way in the Power of the Force 2 days. But I don't know. I kind of dug these guys, and the bodies anyway have been redone many, many times since then. But I think this was the first time that these particular short little Ewoks were used.
Yeah. No, they're definitely fun. And yeah, it's kind of like Jar Jar, right? Like, people hated on him initially, but, a lot of people have come around in the opposite direction, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I always thought that the concept of the Gungans was really way cooler than Jar Jar Binks, and I wish that he didn't have such the stigma that he ended up having.
Mm-hmm.
This was a great idea.
Definitely. I think my favorite of this one, of this wave, was the Anakin, because I don't know, I just really liked the way they executed the ghostly appearance, and I just love the card art too. I think it's got quite a hero image of Anakin there with I like the stars, like kind of like he's like a spectral sort of figure. It's just a neat little way that they handled that.
I'll go for that. I'll take that one for sure. That was awesome. I like it. We'll say Anakin for that one. I like that.
Okay.
I'm actually opening them up in tabs so we can go down at the very end and see.
Nice.
Best. We'll say Anakin. All right.
Huge thanks to Dan Curto for joining me on this episode. In our next episode, we will be focusing on part 2 of Hasbro Star Wars, the 30th Anniversary Collection. We'll be looking at the last few waves of mainline figures, and then we'll go into all of the vehicles, multi-packs, and all the other fun stuff that accompany this line. As always, I want to thank you hugely for tuning into Cantina Chatter Podcast. Be sure to give us a rating wherever you're listening, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere out there in the universe that you're enjoying this show, YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. I hope you enjoyed the show. Let me know your thoughts. What is your favorite figure that we've talked about so far? Let me know down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. And stay tuned for the next couple parts of this series, focusing on the Hasbro Star Wars Modern Toy Line Retrospective, in which we will finish the 30th Anniversary Collection and then the Saga Legends, which was a spin-off that was adjacent to the 30th Anniversary Collection. So all that's coming. Stay tuned. We'll have the next episode up next week. Until next time, no matter where you're tuning in from out in the galaxy, be well, be safe, may the Force be with you. Until next time, bye-bye.